Alright, so here is a mountain scene that I've created in Houdini. If we look at it, it's about 4 million polygons. And for this to be able to work for us, we're going to need to reduce our polygon count, but yet we still want all these details. So there's a few ways that we can go about it. One, if we know that we're going to Maya, we could create displacement maps to help us get all this silhouette detail back. And then through combining that with normal maps to help us with the interior details, we could get the detailing of this mountain completely back into Maya. Another option that we would have is we could decimate this, since this is a background. We could use a smart triangulation method through something like Houdini that would decrease our polygon count, but yet would try to keep the details as much as possible. Now, this wouldn't work so well for a character to decimate it if we plan on having any kind of animations or deformations for it. So this wouldn't be the best approach for deformations, but for something like mountains, that could be just fine, right? Because this is never going to bend or anything like that. Okay, now if we're going to go the game route, or if we just want a low-res version and we don't want to try to create displacement maps or anything like that, we could create normal maps to give us all this nice internal detailing back. We would lose a little bit of our silhouette, but we can get a lot of this nice detailing back. And so that is the method that I'm going to show you right now. So this could apply to games, or if you just need it to be really light inside of Maya, that would work as well. And so the way we would do this is we can import something like this that's pretty low res. You can see it's pretty smooth, so we've lost a lot of details. But we could get that back through creating some maps. Now, for this object, as you can tell, there's not a back side to this. So it's essentially a plane that has these nice deformations that help kind of get us back a little bit towards those mountains. And so what we need to do is lay out UVs. Since it's essentially a plane, though, this will be a very easy process. We don't need to cut UVs or cut edges or anything like that. We essentially need to just unfold it and just lay it out. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come here and I'm going to go to Mesh Display, and I'm going to soften my edges. So I'm going to soften those edges just so that we can get that back to a smooth preview. And then I'm going to click on this, and let's go to our UV editing tool. And this already has some UVs laid on it, but I'm going to show you how you would go about that. So first thing I generally do after I have my edges cut and so forth is I'll come to a planar projection, and that'll just give me a reset of the UVs without cutting any additional edges, which is helpful. And then what we need to do is come over here in our UV toolkit and come down to unfold. And what unfold is going to do is it's just going to unwrap everything. Now we are crossing into several UDIM tiles, and what a UDIM is we have a 0 to 1, a 0 to 1, and then a 1 to 2 and 1 to 2, both horizontally and vertically. And so 0 to 1 would be one UV tile, or another name for that is a UDIM. And so we want to pack this into a UV tile or a UDIM, and the way we do that is by coming down to layout, and if we click layout, you'll see that this packs this this UV into a UDIM, and that's perfect. So that's what we need. So I'm going to export this selection, and I'm going to do an FBX, and I'm going to call it mountain underscore load. That's going to work pretty good. I'm going to come over and open up Substance Painter, and we're going to import that in, and we're going to use some normal maps to get some of that information and the detailing back into this. Okay, so I'm going to go to File and New. Up here we have our template. If you know you're going to Unity or Unreal, you could do something like that. I'm just going to keep this as metallic roughness for now. I'm going to change this to 4K. And then for the file, we want to select, and there should be that mountain load that we just made. So I'm going to go ahead and open that. And so we've got that right there. Set it to 4K. And we're going to do metallic roughness. I'm going to click OK. And now we can see we've got that in there. But as you can tell, it's really smooth and we don't have any of that nice detailing that we had before. And so we want to get that detailing back in there. And so what we're going to do is if we come over here, under texture setting, we'll see this bake mesh maps option. So we're going to click that. Again, I'm going to set this to 4K. And then this little button right here is where we call up our high res. And so let's go ahead and we'll try this high res version first. If it doesn't work, we'll come back and try it. This Mountain High 2 was decimated down to about 1 million polygons, but we'll go ahead and try to call up the 4 million polygon version. Okay, for my search distance, this is going to search for detailing, and so I'm going to set it to a 0.1 just to give it a little more search radius, and 0.1 on the reverse as well. Okay, so this is set to 4K. We've got that set to call up our high res. That's good, and then these defaults should be good. So I'm just going to click on Bake Mesh Maps, and we're going to allow it to do its thing. And as this goes through the process, it's going to bake a variety of maps. It's going to bake us a normal map to help with detailing. It's going to bake a curvature map, which is also going to provide us some nice information. Especially those things are going to be very helpful as we start to build textures, because these maps will tell our textures where cracks are and cavities are and where edges are and so forth. And these materials can be smart in a sense by using those maps, that we can put textures specifically on edges or cavities and so forth. As we wait for this, and we can see that we're starting to get some of that detailing in here. As we wait for this, I'll point this out over here. So this is going to operate a lot like Photoshop. And what I mean when I say that is this is a layer, and we have various transfer modes and things like that we can do adding, we can do multiplying, and so forth. So we're going to let that continue to cook. Take a quick peek at our memory. So I'm kind of running low on memory, so hopefully this doesn't crash. But we'll let it do its thing and see where we go. So I am not going to really do any hand painting or anything like that at this point. What I'm going to show you is how to pretty quickly build up just some procedural textures that will use the maps that we just baked. And you can see those maps right here, right? So we have normal, we have world space normal, ambient occlusion, curvature, position, thickness, and all this stuff is going to help us as we start to build some textures. I'm going to pull that down. So we don't have really any rock textures or anything like that right off the bat. We could try to import some of that stuff, but at this moment I'm not going to try to do anything like that. I'm just going to stick with some of the basic stuff that they give us in here, just to kind of demonstrate how we can build stuff up even with what they've given us. So I'm just going to drag this concrete material out. Okay, maybe I'll drag this other concrete out there. Okay, and maybe I'll drag some of that concrete out there. Okay, and it looks like we have one more concrete. I'll drag that out there. So, and that'll give us a few different layers of concrete. Okay, not for sure I'm digging that one, but I think it's a little bright, but we'll see. Okay, so let's go to our concrete. Let's leave our concrete bare as is. Well, we could scale the texture if we wanted to, but I think where it was at was okay. So, I mean, you can play with that. You can also change the projection type to triplanar, and you can get some interesting things like that. And so, I might like that. So at this point, we aren't using any of our maps or anything like that, other than for bump details and so forth. But I want to start using my maps on some of this overlay stuff. And so I just don't think I'm going to like the concrete clean, so I'm just going to delete that. But I will turn on the concrete dusty layer. And now if I select that layer, what I could do is come over to some of our smart masks. And if I click on that, we could look at some different options for laying that over. So if we do edge scratches, if we take this mask and we drag it onto concrete dusty, it's going to mask that out based off of our underlying masks. And so that's kind of interesting. Let's turn on our concrete simple, and let's drag no, not a cavity rust. I want like an occlusion. Let's do something like that. Okay. And we can flip some of that on and off and see what we're getting. Now the other thing we can do here too is we can click on our layer and we can come down here and see some of our colors and things like that, and we could darken some of this if we wanted to. Copy that. Maybe I'll darken this one. So we can play around with some of that. Not seeing a whole lot of change, a little bit, but not a whole lot. Okay, so let's come to our smart materials and let's see anything we want to play with that. So I have some smart materials that I made, but I don't want to use those. I want to just kind of go through some of the ones that you would just have right off the bat. So let's drag on some dirt. See what the dirt gives us. Okay, and that's kind of interesting. And the dirt actually gives us a folder, so we could open that up and take a look at some of that. But I tend to just kind of keep layering things until I get something that I like. And so let's go back to our materials, and let's take this concrete, that first one, and let's drag that on top. And let's go back to our smart masks, and let's see what kind of let's just try some different masks. So we'll try this cavity rust on there, and that's kind of interesting. We can also play with the mask. So there's a mask editor. So if we click on the color and if we click on the mask, we'll get different options. So if I click on this mask editor, I can come down here and I can play around with some of the textures. And I can play around with curvature and some of those settings to kind of start to expose some different looks. So maybe we want something like that where we're starting to kind of grunge some of this up a little bit more. Okay. Another thing we have layers. We also have fill layers. So we could like add a fill layer, and if we come down to our fill, we'll have a base color for it. So if we drag it into the color, we'll get like these wheels. So we could, try to mimic some vegetation or something that's starting to grow in here. And then what we would want to do though is add a mask to this, and so we can add our own mask, and we'll add a white mask. And then on our mask, we scroll all the way down, we can come to this uniform color. If we click on that, we'll get a bunch of different options. So we could use our smart masks, but we could also use some things in here as well and see if we get anything that looks kind of interesting. And so we could paint on it. I don't know that I want to do that. Let's clear, or let's remove that mask, and let's go back to a smart mask. So on this, let's look for another cavity type thing, or maybe even moss. I wonder what moss would look like on here. So we could throw moss on. We could throw this other type of moss on there. And so that might look kind of interesting to start getting some greenery in here. And again, we can come to this mask builder and we can play with things like the curvature, top-down gradient. Seems like that's having an interesting effect. We can play around with the grunge. You can get some interesting and different looks that way as well. Another thing I would probably like is for anytime we have rock, is for these edges to be a little brighter. So maybe we come back to our materials and maybe let's drag another concrete on there. And let's go to Smart Masks again. And we could look at different types of edges for that layer. So I'll drag that on there. And so now we can see like that's giving us like rock exposure for those edges and so forth. Okay. And maybe we come back to our smart materials. We could play with some dust as well. Yeah, I don't know that I'm digging the dust. Just has some little specks, so maybe trash the dust. Maybe we could drag another dirt on here and then play around with some of the dirt properties. So maybe let's flip off some of these eyeballs, see what that's doing. Our gradient, so if I click on our gradient, I see that we're getting some different colors. So again, maybe we could kind of play around with some vegetation type feels to get something a little more interesting. And then kind of here we could play around with scale. Some triplanar, that looks good. Okay. Now this, if you notice, is a folder and we have like masks to the layers underneath. We could even play around with masks on that one. So if we wanted to drag another mask on that, we could see what that looks like. And then the other fun thing that we can do too is we can start to play around with some of the transfer modes. So we could do like maybe like even a multiply, and maybe we don't like that, but we could kind of start toggling through some of this and seeing for these layers, like if there's something that just kind of mixes well. That darken seems okay. This concrete bear, so that was kind of our edges, and maybe we come to our mask editor on that. Kind of dragging this back and forth, just seeing what we're getting. Okay, and if we pull some of our curvature back on that, what does that do for us? So I'm just kind of looking at some of the effects that some of this is doing. Yeah, and so again, we could play around with some of the transfer modes on that, see if there's anything in particular that we like. And we might like just the normal version. But it might be kind of fun just to kind of at least try some other ones, especially because all I'm doing is just clicking up. Once I've changed this, I can just click up and down on my arrow key and just get some different looks really quick. So it really doesn't take long to do that. I think I kind of like that version. Oops. Okay, and then this fill layer, what's that one doing? Okay, so here we can kind of play around with some of these too. So I think you can see like real quickly how easily and quickly we can get different looks and feels on a lot of this sort of stuff. Okay. Oops. Yeah. And this concrete, what's that doing? So sometimes it's nice just to go toggle things on and off, and maybe as you do one, you're like, hey, you know what, I kind of like it without. Which in a way I kind of think I do, because it seems like we get a little more cavity. But this is all just artistic, right? So let's come through here and let's play some other transfer modes. Just get some different mixtures. The overlay is interesting. Might be a little intense though. So maybe normal's okay for that one. And I kind of like that. And now we could, even come up here and try a little bit more. Under Smart Materials, let's look and see what else we've got. Materials, we've also got. We do have some other things that we could try in here. This rust. Maybe drop this rust down here somewhere. See if we can move that down some. So rust is looking kind of interesting. So under the rust, maybe we could try kind of play around with this coloring and kind of see if there's anything else that feels kind of good. Took out some of that saturation, but I kind of like it. I might just play around with making it just a little bit darker. And so then maybe again we play around with some of this and see if there's something in particular that we like. So some of that's even like looking really cool, like after we take off the edges, this edge expose. It's looking kind of cool. So maybe if we move that edge expose up a little bit more even. If we came in here to that mask editor and kind of played around with some of that. Now I kind of feel like the edges are like way too bright. But I do like having some exposure kind of mixing back in. So maybe what we need to take a look at is this coloring, or no, we don't want to do that for the, we want to do that for our fill layer. So maybe luminosity down a hair. But yeah, that's starting to look kind of interesting. We're getting lots of different details and so forth. And maybe back to this dirt. Come to that mask editor. So it's a lot of back and forth once you kind of get rolling with it. But you may find some stuff that you really start to like. And so I can see down here it's thinking. I'm trying to calculate a bit of stuff there. Okay. Cool. Last thing I might do is play around with this this edging even a little bit more. Mask editor. And maybe I'll do one last thing and then we'll call it good. Okay, so I'm going to just pull this up here on top of that, and then maybe we try one other edge type. So if we did this edge strong, I do like that. Again, I just think it's a bit intense. So now if we quickly kind of go through some of that. Oops. You can get some different types of fall off and so forth. So again, I might bring down, maybe we can drag that to be under the other one. So this top one's just a little bit brighter, and then this one just backs things a little bit. Okay, let's look at how we could quickly get something like this over into Maya. So let's go to File and Export Textures. If we click on Configuration, you'll see all the different types, and if you click on these, it'll kind of show you the maps that you'll get and so forth. So since I know I'm going to Arnold, I'll probably do one of the Arnold presets, and this just shows me what's going to get in the preset, or if I wanted to add some of my own into there, this is where you would build that. But you actually need to call it here. So the configuration, we would need to kind of scroll through. We need to look for the there we go, the Arnold AI5 standard. Okay, and we're going to do it as 4096. Okay, and we'll click here and say where we want that to go. We'll select that folder, and then we'll export some maps. So now that's kicking out some maps for us. Cool, cool, cool. Get that over into Maya, and we'll take a quick look at what we can do in Maya. Okay, so let's go to My Classic. Okay, so let's jump here into our Hypershade, and we'll go down to Arnold, and we'll do our AI standard shader. So we'll middle mouse drag them out of that. Okay. So I'm just going to click it. Come over here to my attribute editor. We could work here too, but sometimes I like this view a bit better. So we're going to go to our color and do a file. We're going to go find what we got. So for our color, looks like we have a base color. Cool. And then we can go back up let's see what all we got on that. So we got base color. We did get a height, so we could look at playing a little bit with that, but I would prefer to like go through like ZBrush to create like some displacement maps and things like that. So I'll probably skip that and the metalness for now. So we'll use our we'll try our roughness, and then we'll use our normal map too. So for our specular, let's go to roughness, go to file, okay, and then for our normal, let's do, so I just hit tab to bring this up to normal map. Cool. Input, we'll do file, we'll get that normal. Okay, now we have this normal map. And we'll do the out value to, let's see, our normal camera. Okay. So now, if I click 6, I should see some of that on here. Okay. Okay, oops. Wake up a little bit. Okay. So one thing I know right off the bat, we typically need to make a couple adjustments to our normal. So if I come and I click on the file, let's change the color space. Let's change that to raw. Okay. Oops. Okay. 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 So let's check some of this out. So let's go ahead and just make an Arnold light. We'll just, for right now, create a physical sky, just so we can kind of get the gist of how some of this is working. And let's go ahead and take a render and see how this is panning out for us so far. Okay, I am seeing that our normal map is working for us. So on here, let's kind of change our angle a little bit. A couple other things we could do, so we can play with our shader a little bit. So we can play with our specular. We can play with all of this to kind of start getting some things to work the way that we want them to work. One thing I might do right off the bat is come over here and put the exposure up to 2, and then come down to camera under visibility and turn that off. Save this image, and let's get a quick render. So I don't want this part to go on too long, because I think you guys have an idea of how to get things over and into Maya. The main things I kind of want to point out is just kind of how to hook things up, and then you can play around with the shaders and whatnot. So the normal map, we do have an intensity. So if we feel like this is too strong or something, we could go to 0.5 and reduce some of that intensity. So let's save that. Looks a little intense in there, so I'll just take a couple quick renders, see if that helps out. Okay, I don't want to lose all the detail, so again, maybe we go 0.75. That, and then we can remember that, and just kind of try to find a happy medium that we're happy with. It's not too intense, but does give us some detailing. Okay, so another thing to kind of point out to you guys too, anytime that you work with textures, just know that Maya does put a blur effect on it. So sometimes I'll turn down this blur effect so that I get as much resolution as I can without it becoming crackly. So I'll just kind of do 0.1, and also we could do 0.1, and just take a quick render and see how that's looking. All right, cool. Well, that's just a quick basic intro on how to get some lights or get some textures into Maya, and that might be a little intense, so we'll just come here and maybe we'll rotate a little bit. Take a picture. All right, cool. Well, at this point, I think that's a nice basic introduction on how to get things into Substance Painter, make some maps, and then get them out of Substance Painter and over into something like Maya and start rendering with it.